We're live on Facebook. Hello, Facebook friends and family. I'm Love Coach Scott Catamas with two of my favorite people on the planet, my teaching partner, Trish Wright, and
Hi.
my very good friend, Paul Sterling, whom you have inevitably seen. And this is going to be a unique episode of Straight Talk. So many people are going through relationship challenges right now. I mean, just like person after person after person that we interact with, everybody except for Winston, Trisha's cat that she was just reaching towards. And Winston's doing well, but everybody else is going through relationship challenges. So we wanted to do a show where really we take the most significant common relationship challenges, acknowledge them, have empathy for them, and then offer solutions. And so Paul has come on and is going to help us out. And I want to acknowledge we've got 5 friends in the Zoom room, and we are probably going to want to interact with all of you. So welcome Jeff, Kay, Krishna, Paul McFarland, and Waterfall. And if anybody else wants to come into our Zoom room, I will put up in Facebook the Zoom room, and you can come on in because we're going to interact with people. With no further ado, I'm going to put the spotlight on Paul, who's going to kind of explain a little bit more about what we're doing tonight.
Yeah, because I had a talk with Scott earlier, and what I want to do is talk about the two different relationships. You know, Scott, you said people are having challenges right now, and there's two major ones that are happening. Some people are single right now and by themselves, and they've never spent this much time alone, and they're having a problem with their relationship with themselves. It's like too much time with themselves. So it's like we're looking at what are the common problems with our relationship with ourselves, low self-esteem, et cetera, and then what are the common problems that happen in relationships? Because Scott has been doing this for a long time, and Trisha's dove in with immense enthusiasm and is brought her incredible wisdom to this. So what I want to do is I want to help people get clear. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? What are the most common problems? And what are some solutions that they can walk away with? And what are the impacts of not dealing with that problem? Because if you look at health problems, if we don't deal with a health problem, like sometimes they don't go away. I have a challenge with some teeth that I haven't gone to see the dentist in a long time from this whole COVID thing. And I'm pretty much guessing that it hasn't gone away. And it's the same in relationships. If you don't deal with the issues, some of them don't go away. So Scott, Trish, what are some of the most common relationship issues for couples right now? And then we'll go into common relationship issues with ourselves.
I'm going to put the spotlight on Trish so she can respond first.
Yeah, some of my clients, some of my couples are really dealing with, there's child's care stuff that's coming up. Like lots of the children are at home, and parents who aren't teachers are now teachers and doing their own lives, and so there's stuff there. There's some big,
So wait, Trish, let me interrupt for a second. I want to dive deeper into that because so many people out there right now have had to take on bigger roles with their kids. What's been some of the other impacts in the relationship of that?
Okay, so things that are happening in relationships for parents that I see and that I'm hearing peripherally are, okay, so the lack, intimacy with your partner is harder. Dealing with how you interact with homework and actually schoolwork, and your children being in front of screens all day. So, parents used to have rules about how much time a child spent in front, and so now you're having conflicting beliefs. There's also, if one parent's now working outside the home and one parent's staying home, or if both parents are staying home, finding the space to actually work and do the work. So your kid has to have a desk, you have to have a desk, and so does your partners have to have desks. I mean, it's just like people are being crammed in. And then there's also like just a lot of people are having struggles with how to show up in compassionate communication while things are up in your face all the time. You don't like leave. You have to be there all the time, right?
Let me even slow you down again. Like you're saying so many important things. And part of what I think I heard was there's a new set of agreements. And because one of my mentors, Tony Robbins, said most agreements are unspoken until broken. And so it's like, if you're working at home, it sounds like there needs to be a whole new set of agreements about space and privacy and productivity and communication.
Yeah. I mean, anything that people were struggling with before COVID is now they're still struggling with it. It's just now it's kind of like lit on fire because you don't have the space or the coping mechanisms that you used to have, which might be, going out of the home or visiting friends, and it makes it so much more complicated, right? So a whole new set of agreements, a whole new set of social interaction rules, right?
So before we end tonight, I'd love to get like a couple of tips from you on coping skills that people can use to keep the intimacy open and connecting, and maybe even take it deeper. Because Scott, I know, has dogs, and I know you have your cat sitting behind you, but there's something called dog years. So one people years is like 7 dog years, and 1 month in COVID is like 7 years in a normal relationship. It's like you spend more time together. So anything else that you think are like for either the couples or for relationship with self?
Gosh, I think that what COVID has done is really given people an opportunity to really look at what their habits are, really look at what their breakdowns are, and really, really look at what their beliefs are. Because I mean, especially at the beginning of COVID in March, we went into serious lockdown. And so you really, like, lots of people spent a lot of time alone or in their really tight communities. So you're now looking at things that you might not have been looking at, internal processes, internal thoughts and feelings, and maybe cycles that you've gotten into. And now because of COVID, like it's either you've looked at them and worked through them, or you're still struggling with them and wondering why, right?
Yeah. And it's like we've had a lot of great strategies to avoid looking at these things before, whether it's drinking or partying or, just work. So Scott, I'd love to bring you in here. I don't know anybody who works harder and is more dedicated in helping couples from early in the morning. I've got to hang out with them for a bit now, early in the morning to late at night. So what's been I know you've been dealing with couples already, but what's been the sort of the big shift?
In terms of this current time that we're in?
Yeah, this time with COVID and the pressure that having these lockdown and this change in the social dynamics.
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately what's happened is because so many of our distractions have been taken away. We can't go to festivals, sporting events, concerts, movies, and now even bars and restaurants are all closing in California, according to Governor Newsom, who issued an order. So many of the things that we've done in life, movies, to enjoy, to get away from the house, to distract ourselves, are all gone. And so not only are we at home much more, but whether we're at home with whoever we live with or at home alone with ourselves, there's just much more having to look at our shit, having to look at our stuff. And if it's hard relationship, really having to look at that. If it's our own personal addictions or our compulsions, it's having to face that. And so I would say that people that have good tools for self-reflection and looking at themselves or looking at the relationship, it's actually a wonderful time of growth, challenging, but overall people feel good about it.
So let me back you up there. I want to go deeper, but it's like when people hear good tools, some of the people are going to know right away what you're talking about. And a lot of people aren't, because I know for me, when I started on this path, I had no idea what a good tool was, or that there even was tools.
Mhm.
So when you say good tools, what's that kind of mean? And what can people do?
Yeah, well, let's start with when conflict arises, not making it about blame or shame. That's like the bottom line, whether that's through compassionate communication or other courses you've taken, that conflict is inevitable.
Yes.
Differences are inevitable. When they arise, do you go into blaming the other person or shaming yourself, neither of which is healthy? Or do you go into self-reflection, and if there's another person involved, quality communication about it? Okay.
And you've taught me something. I'm going to give my metaphor, and I'm going to use give you your tool, but it's easier to deal with an acorn than it is an oak. And there was a book out there, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And I think that's actually, I'm going to be politically incorrect bullshit, that if it's more important to catch it when it's small,
Yeah.
than wait till it's a big blow up. And so one of the things you teach, and what I want people to know tonight, we're going to give people sort of a buffet, like a little bit of an introduction to stuff. And at the end, if you want to go deep, because we're talking about habits and patterns that have been with us 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Don't expect that you're going to be on a call with us, listen to Scott and Trish, and you're going to be fixed. It's like, that's like sitting on a call with us and expecting, if we were teaching you about weightlifting, expect to get off the call and be buff, unless you were buff when you got on the call. So this call is to let you know the tools are there. And if you want to go to the gym and build up your relationship body or skills, we'll tell you at the end how to do that. So what is that tool that you have, Scott, that helps people catch the acorns before they become oaks?
Well, really identifying what our triggers are, all right? And taking the time to self-reflect and recognize, you know what, Trish, I get really triggered when I'm not understood clearly. And I've learned Trish gets triggered when people raise their voice, especially if it's directed towards her. So there's two examples of something I know about myself and something I've learned about Trish, right? And see, I get love for that. So, to thine own self be true, saith Shakespeare. Know thyself, know what your triggers are, so that when you know your triggers, you can communicate them to the people close to you. And when you do get triggered, it's not that, oh, Trish is a terrible person, but it's, oh, wow, she didn't meet my need for understanding. And that's a trigger that I have. That's my issue that gets re-stimulated when I'm not understood the way I want to be understood by somebody.
So what I want to do is, this is so critical in this, and I'll bounce to you in a second, Trish, but it's like, how do you kind of recognize when you're triggered before it becomes too late? Because there's a place where you shift from your partner being your ally to being the enemy. And it's a transition. And it's like, how do you catch it early on? And Trish, did you want to jump in there, or do you want Scott to?
Well, I wanted to say that Scott was bringing up a really good point, is that if I'm having the feeling, like if I'm like, oh gosh, something's happening, I'm having this feeling, it's internally created, right? And so being able to slow down and stop and be like, okay, hey, I feel this way. How do I come back into connection, right? How do I stay in connection so I can be really honest and share my feelings, and then come back into connection and be like, hey, is there something that's still there, or something that needs to be there? And Scott does have all these amazing tools. Like he has a love coach academy that he helps people develop amazing skills and amazing relationship skills to build their relationship with themselves and other people, right?
So Trish, I want to back up though. You said it's internal. Most people would say the reason I'm triggered is because of you. You did this to me. You made me feel this way. So how do you take ownership of it versus
Well,
it's your fault.
so here's the thing. I assume, well, I'm just going to give everyone the benefit of the doubt that Paul and Scott, you guys aren't going to just be assholes because you can be. You're not going to just stimulate all the things that make me feel insecure just because you want to. So then if I know that these two beautiful men in front of me love me, you're not going to do things to harm me intentionally.
Yeah.
If they are doing things to harm you intentionally, you might want to stop, slow down, go to a therapist, and maybe get out of that relationship, because that's called abuse. Anyway, sidestep that. But if to really take responsibility for that, I have to know that, okay, I'm having a feeling of upset or fear or anger. And who's creating that? Right? Is Scott creating that, or is Paul creating that? No, something inside of me is creating that. It could be a story from the past, likely, or it could be some story that I'm making up about the situation. So it's either an intimacy threshold, or it's some repeat story that's just coming back to haunt my whole reality. I'm like, oh, I'm back in the pattern or the cycle again, right?
Can you give us an example of a story? Because I think that when we share our stories, it creates connection. When we believe our stories, it creates separation.
Okay, an example of a story.
When you did this, when he did that, when it meant.
I'll do one from a client I worked with tonight. So for starters, I'm going to get to the story in a moment, but remember, what we want to do is not react to an interpretation that we have of another. Okay. So just want to lay that down. We're learning not to react to our interpretations of another. So I was working with a couple, and her story is that her husband doesn't respect her, and that no matter what she does, it's never going to be good enough. And her husband is no longer her equal partner. Her husband has actually become this character in her archetypal landscape that's kind of a disapproving authority figure that she's constantly trying to please with the story that she never can.
Wait, her dad?
Yeah, right. No, this is her husband.
I know.
Right. He's become a father. He's become an authority figure. He's become more of a father that she's trying to please. And again, the story is, no matter what I do, I can't please him. So of course she does all these things to try to please him, but no matter how he even responds, because her story is so strong, she doesn't get the response that she's looking for. So it becomes a self-perpetuating misery go round.
We get what we expect. So how do we go in? Because Scott, you and I have different definitions for it. I call it your relationship operating system, your habits, patterns, and beliefs. But it's basically the unconscious programming that runs the show. Mm-hmm. And the term I think I heard you say earlier was runs the show and will sabotage it. And it's like you could be in a great relationship, and if you don't clear up the past, however you do that, then the past is in the present and you're sabotaging any possibility for the future. Mm-hmm. So haunted. Yeah, exactly. The ghosts of relationships past are in bed with you right now. So how do you clear up? How do you get rid of the ghosts of, and it's perfect. It's like the Christmas Carol right now, the ghosts of relationship past.
Oh, really, the best bet is if you have a really strong dedication to being able to self-reflect and really journal what your triggers are. That's one way. The other way is to get a coach. And it's kind of like, do you have the discipline? If you're wanting to exercise and build up your body, are you the kind of person that has the discipline to do it by yourself at home? And some people do. Or are you someone that needs to go to the gym? Or are you someone who needs to get a fitness trainer to actually work with you? And
all at the gym.
All at the gym, right? And all three are legitimate ways. You can learn by yourself if you've got a good dedication to self-reflection, or you hire Trish or myself or Paul Sterling to coach you individually, or you join a course like Relationship Essentials or the class that Trisha and I are teaching next Saturday, a week from tomorrow, and you learn with a group of people. And there are all three ways of doing it. It just depends on your particular style.
So let me ask you, what does coaching mean? And I'm going to start with a frame that I've heard coaching, therapy, counseling, you know, especially from the masculine point of view, is if I'm going to get help, it means there's something wrong or broken with me. And I'm going to pay somebody to gang up with my partner and to let me know how bad, stupid, and wrong I am. So I want to say that that's out there. So can you just like address that a little bit? Is that what happens in coaching? Are we trying to figure out who's bad, stupid, and wrong and blame them so that we hammer their self-esteem?
Let me address that first. Two things I want to say, and then I'd love to hear from Trish. First off, when you have a toothache, you go to the dentist. When your car is struggling, you go to a mechanic. And so somehow we have the idea that when our relationships are the most important thing in our life, right? We also need to get support sometimes. Now, I recognize that there is kind of the public persona of therapy where you're on a couch and some person who really doesn't care about you is asking these probing questions and then diagnosing what's wrong with you. We don't do any of that in Love Coach Academy. We're not here to diagnose or evaluate what's wrong with anybody, because I don't believe there is anything wrong with anybody. We're here to help people remember how wonderful they are and how hard it is to be a human being and how hard human relationships can be. We're compassion-based, empathy for how hard life can be, empathy for how hard our relationships can be. And it's from that place that we operate. And then I'll turn it over to Trish.
So as I understand it, therapy works in your past. Therapy is really working with your past experiences, your past life, the things that happened from utero to now. And that's been my experience in therapy, that person helps me dissect all that and helps me organize my own brain around it. What I understand as coaching is that coaching is looking forward to the future to help you find ways and to really get really clear about how to get to what you want.
Yeah.
Right. So in Love Coach Academy, we are trained and we're focused on helping you stay in connection, you know, through empathy and compassion, through listening skills, through communication skills and vulnerability skills. Like these are the places where that builds the deepest, juiciest relating that you can possibly get. And it takes some work. It takes some skillfulness, because you can't just like tromp around and be like, oh, I want to give you all the vulnerability now. And like, ah, and then here, Scott, you hold it. And then the person's like, oh God, I don't even know what to do. Ah, that was too much, too fast. And it takes a skilled person to be like, hey, you know, I have some things coming up, or even to get in touch with your own feelings, right? So that's what Love Coach Academy and that's what Relationship Essentials essentially gives you, is this opportunity to figure out what you want and need, what your feelings are, and to also be able to hear compassionately and connect compassionately with your persons. And not just saying like just in romantic relationship, but your relationships with your parents or your children or your friends or your romantic or your dating, like they're all going to get better. Right?
Yeah.
There's two things I want to actually real quickly, just because you asked how to handle when there's a man who is threatened or concerned about getting coaching.
Yes.
And usually what I do is I ask them, do you ever do sports? Yes. What's your favorite sport? Baseball, basketball, whatever it is. Hey, do you ever have a coach that really helped you become a better baseball player, that helped you to have a better shot in basketball? You know, and I help them remember a positive time that they received coaching. And most men have some memory of, an athletic, somebody that took interest in them in Little League or even just in school to become a little bit better at something. So there's that piece. I also do really want to acknowledge the people in our Zoom room. And so I want to get to those comments because usually we get to comments by now. Jay Mayer, who is a dear friend of ours, the creator of Light Touch, reminds us that light touch is a wonderful way to invoke blessings and receive support. So thank you, Jay, for that reminder. And our dear friend Krishna writes, Tony Robbins says, the level of consciousness which creates a problem will never be able to solve it. An external coach or practitioner can hold space and stop us from going into the old patterns and help us transcend the level of stuckness. So thank you, Krishna, for reminding us. And now I'll go back to gallery view and whatever Paul wanted to do next.
Yeah, and actually, I think Tony's quoting Einstein in that. And one of my mentors, a guy named Dr. Deming, he's the guy who taught the Japanese about quality and productivity after World War II. Studying his work and then studying with Marshall Thurber taught me the difference between symptoms and systems. And symptoms are what people come into coaching for. They come in because there's arguments and there's upsets and there's conflict. And typically they come in because they're trying to figure out who is the problem. And what I think, Scott, you try to do is help them. No, it's not who is the problem, because that's just going to create more of this. What is the problem? The way that we're communicating. So it'd be good to see some examples of communication that's going to create conflict and more distance. And how do you take that same thing and create compassion and understanding, where it could go either way? Like having the right tool, you're going to get laid tonight, and having the wrong tool, you're going to be sleeping on the couch or in the doghouse, whatever it is. I mean, it's like, I'm sorry, I just needed it to be really clear.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So listening as opposed to just speaking, let's just start with the bottom line for good communication is slowing down and ask yourself a question. Am I as interested in what he or she has to say as I am in expressing myself? And when it's not going well, we're just wanting to be heard and we're not really listening.
So wait, I'm going to interrupt Scott again. He's going to shoot me. But listening, like what I want to ask you, Scott, is what are you listening for? Because the other person is listening. We're all listening. But what I might be hearing is that I'm bad, stupid, wrong. What are you hearing that's different? How are you listening?
Well, first of all, hearing and listening.
Right.
One takes an action.
And a lot of people aren't listening. They're already thinking up their defense or what they're going to say next, or they're in reaction to whatever they heard. So first off, I would say that, again, active listening is really slowing down, listening, and reflecting back your understanding of what you heard to make sure that that person was heard properly, which is, of course, a basic of compassionate communication, right? One thought at a time. This is my thought. What did you hear? And then reflecting back. I was working with somebody today, and they're going with all their thoughts, and I had to stop them. And in their world, they were just on, sharing all these important things. And I pointed out 5 completely different thoughts, each of which was an important thought, each of which was an important topic that could really have a conversation that they had just buzzed through. I had to stop them and say, well, let's slow down and take it one at a time. And I get paid to do this. So I was able to track 5, and then I had to stop them. Most people can't get past 1, but we get into a monologue and we start sharing all sorts of different thoughts. So that's part of listening and expressing.
Trish, you had something you wanted to add to that, I think?
Oh, so much. No, Scott, I love what you're saying there. And yeah, it is, the slowing down piece is so important, right? Slowing down to actually to listen to that person. And that means asking yourself if you care. Do I care right now? Or am I just listening through a filter of I'm pissed or I'm upset? Or like, are you listening through that story, right? There's that term again, there's that story. Or am I listening through an emotion and I need to go self-source myself, or I need to go figure out how to be a compassionate human being again, right? So I think that there's a lot of places where in arguments, people have this tendency to be like, I need to get hurt, or some hurts, or da da da, and it's all like this. And instead of slowing down, taking just a break to really tap into yourself, like, oh my God, I have this feeling right now, and I wonder what this person's feeling. So once you can tap into your own body and drop out of that, that amygdala place, that reptilian brain, and drop back into your frontal lobe, that's when you can actually hear the other person. And I mean, hearing it means being caring and curious. So you're like, wow, I was upset and I was afraid and I wanted to be heard. I didn't know if you would hear me. And now I'm curious about what's going on for you. What was up for you that was giving you this response? And so as you're coming to someone from your wants, needs, and feelings, like you can actually start to go into that deeper level of intimacy, right?
Yeah, and be curious about, I'm kind of leading the witness here, but one of the things I've learned from one of our teachers, Marshall Rosenberg, is listening for feelings and needs underneath what could be easily perceived as judgments and attacks. So it's learning how to translate is what I think both of you are talking about. And so that seems like a critical skill. And how long, Scott, can you teach that in a 15-minute class?
I would say that I can teach the basics of it in a class, but then it's the practice of doing it. So that's why we structure our course so that there's what we teach on Saturday morning, and then we practice it on Wednesday nights. And then we also give people practice partners. About half of the people who take our course are doing it with a partner. It might be their husband or their wife or their boyfriend or their mother or their father or their girlfriend, or just a platonic friend. About half the people are coming in completely single, and so we set them up with practice partners. We also set up practice pods, because again, everybody learns differently. So teaching the basics of it, actually, it's fairly simple. Changing the neurological pathway of our brain, changing our habitual way of expressing ourselves or listening or not listening, takes practice.
What I'd love to do before I see we've got some questions here that I'm going to bounce to in a second. I'd love to, Scott, if it's possible, hear a couple of stories of people that came in here where it felt hopeless and helpless. They still loved each other, but basically the relationship was going to end and something turned around. What turned around? And can you give us I know I didn't prepare you for this at all, but can you give us a story or two of?
Yeah, I mean, really, what usually turns it around is remembering the love. So to be honest, when I'm working with a couple, even if they're super fractured, I won't go right into the problems first. I'll ask them to look each other in the eye and remember a moment in which they felt really well loved and cared for by the other. And I'll see how easy it is for them to access a moment, how easy or difficult it is to share it with the other, and how easy or hard it is for the other to receive it and remember it. And that lets me know where they're at. Because in that little practice, I can see in the first 10 or 15 minutes, if they're still absolutely looking for fixing this and resolving it, and, or if they're really stuck in their pain. And sometimes they're so in their pain, they can't do that practice. And sometimes they're so in their pain, they can't receive it. And sometimes one person can go there and the other person can't. So that to be honest, is like a litmus test that shows me where people are. And my job before we even get to any of the problems is how then get back to remembering the love, get back to remembering why I am with this person, maybe why we made children together, why we married, why we're living together, or even if it's a newer relationship, why I'm in a coaching session with this person. So helping them to remember the love is about love coaching, whereas a lot of therapists will go right into, so tell me about the affair that he had, or tell me about, and they'll go right into the problem, which creates the conflict. And then people already are defensive. And I'm no longer a love coach. I'm a judge. And they're wanting me to rule in their favor that they're right and their partner is wrong, right? Or they're wanting me to become the defense attorney, right? So that's the difference between love coaching. It's helping people remember the love and building on remembering the love. That then people, now the positive side, where they start remembering the love, they start remembering that I'll build on it. What are the qualities of this person that you love so much? And they share the qualities. What are the virtues and the character strengths? What do you learn from this person? Now they're remembering and hearing all the beautiful things, and it helps to bring them back together. And it's not until they're connected that we even begin to look at the hurtful patterns or problems.
And the types of problems, I've told this person we're going to get to their question in a second, but just one last thing on this, because there are people probably on the call that go, yeah, but that's great for people who are getting along, but
no, that's for people that came in and they're at each other's throats. Yeah. I'm going to make that very, very clear. What I just described, because you asked me to give it.
Right. No, I understand. Let me just finish this and then I'll hand it right back to you. But it's like, I think what you're talking about, Scott, is broken agreements, broken trust, lies, betrayals, affairs, cheating. It's like, this is not just for someone with a minor upset. They didn't take the trash out. This is like,
big stuff.
Big stuff.
Big stuff.
And
you know what? All that big stuff didn't happen because anybody was a bad human being. It happened because they made choices that had hurtful consequences. And we do have to get to the point where we acknowledge how choices we made or choices that took place had hurtful consequences, but not because somebody is bad or wrong. Okay? It's remembering that all beings at their heart just want to love and be loved. We all want to be loved. We all want to be cared for. And we actually all want to be good at loving and caring for others. But we get so lost in the story of our pain or the story of guilt or shame or blame. So I try and take them outside of the blame, shame, judgment, criticism, reality that they're stuck in. And remember that these are two wonderful people who want to experience love in beautiful ways, who want to care for and be cared for. And it's not until we remember that we get to processing why the affair happened or the consequences of the affair.
Wow. Thank you. And then the questions come up here, and then I want to ask more about the course that's coming up for people who want to take this as a deeper dive, because this is obviously, it's like watching Scott, watching Trish work and the other love coaches. It's sort of like watching someone who's a masterful pianist. They make it look easy, and they don't get triggered. At least they get triggered less often. So but it takes building up some muscles and skills. So Jeff has asked about long distance relating empathy. So communication tools around that. That is a big challenge right now. It's long distance dating and keeping love alive and giving empathy. So
let's get over to Trish, because I've been kind of
down.
And Trish is brilliant. She runs singles programs. She helps singles. Turning over to Trish.
Gosh, I love you guys so much. You're such beautiful men. Online long distance dating. Well, that's a whole thing, isn't it? Paul and I are developing a dating workshop that's helping people really find ways to really understand themselves. So hold on. I just have to say this one thing, is that it's not that you're not gonna not get triggered as often. You're just gonna have skillful, loving ways to deal with your triggers now, and to hold compassionate like space for your partner having triggers as well. So it's you're gonna get triggered. These things are gonna happen. Like humans are humans, right? It's about showing up in that way. I'm like, oh, I could be a B word right now, or I could be like, wow, okay, I want to stay in connection. Again, I've said this multiple times in this show, is that it really is about keeping the people, or bringing them back into connection, and that's something that Scott taught me, is coming back into connection. Do you want to just like poke at the sore spot, or do you want to remember what's the truth? And I think that that's a really big piece in empathy, right? Mm-hmm. It's not about poking at something that's sore, at the broken part. It's about seeing it and really acknowledging it for its beauty and for its softness. So
I think I heard something just quick and backing up a little bit, but it's like being with your vulnerability, not pretending that you don't have it, is what I think I heard you saying there. Like if you get triggered, it's like admitting and going, God, that, that stung or that hurt, and I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to stay connected. So
vulnerability is the key piece to intimacy. That's, I mean, the more vulnerable you can go, which is the deeper parts of yourself, the deeper that you can connect with another person. I mean, what's more connecting? I'm just going to ask, I'm going to bait you right now. What's more connecting? All right, Paul, you did this thing, and you're like, or me showing, oh my gosh, wow, I'm really hurt right now, and I'm really scared, and I'm really needing to just like be held and to feel safe. And then Paul can be like, well, I'm angry at you, you can just F off. Or he can be like, oh, she's scared, she wants to feel safe. I can't give you those things right now. I can't show up and hold you and make you feel safe. Or, I mean, there's multiple ways. Do you see there's ways to respond rather than react? And that's what Love Coach Academy, and that's what these classes that Paul teaches and I teach and Scott teaches, like these are all the tools, because things are going to come up. And especially even in dating, like I know that sometimes dating on a screen like feels so disconnecting. It's like, oh, this person is just on television. But it's even more important to use your words here and your intimacy and your vulnerability to get into those nitty-gritty places, right? The two longest relationships that I've ever had have started online. They've started through either Facebook or because we got so deep into our emotional vulnerability right up front and our wants and needs.
So
That's
especially for the masculine, we've heard that vulnerability, when I grew up, vulnerability was weakness. And any place in my family that I showed vulnerability with my older brother or my father, it was used against me. So how do we go from feeling vulnerability is weakness and to be avoided at all costs, especially if you're in the masculine form, to vulnerability is a precious, powerful skill? And then what I want to do in a minute, I'm going to prep Scott for this, is I want to hear, what are some of the skills people learn in Relationship Essentials?
I answer the vulnerability piece.
So Trish, dive in a little if you would.
So my client that I was working with today is a man who comes from a different culture, who's very stoic. Like It's like a Germanic culture, and he's very stoic. So he doesn't really actually understand how to tap into his feelings. We worked on just today these questions. When I'm vulnerable, I love sentence stems. So when I'm vulnerable, and just free write what that means. What does vulnerability mean to you? So really understanding what that looks like. When I'm vulnerable, I get what? Like, what's the benefit? So what do I get when I'm vulnerable? And what is unsafe when I'm vulnerable? And so those three questions, they weren't in that exact order, but what he, as we were like learning through and going down deeper into it, he realized like, oh, there's some fear there about being vulnerable because people have used it against him. I mean, oh, I'm going to go back to that. But also getting down lower is that he was like, oh my gosh, there's some fear. There's also, I get a lot of benefit with my wife when I'm vulnerable with her. Like the more vulnerable I am with her, the deeper our connection can go. And so as he started to understand that it really is about this discerning when and how to be vulnerable. Like I'm not going to just show up at Scott's door and be like, I have all this stuff to share with you right now. Hold it for me. But even then I was coaching him to, consensual conversations is also important. Sometimes it's not the right time, Paul. And you have to be like, hey, do you have capacity to have a conversation with me right now? And he'd be like, I actually have 5 minutes. So no, can we do this later? And that creates an automatic agreement, right? So you're like, oh yeah, we're going to get together and have this conversation.
It's a term, I thank you for that. I said setting your partner up to win. Like before you start into a deep dive conversation, ask them, is it a good time? That's a great tip. And otherwise you kind of go, oh, you start this conversation and then they have to leave and you go, they don't love me or whatever story it is. So,
but it also sets them up for, they know you have something to talk to them about. Okay, so there's a difference. Hold on, I have to actually give a distinction. There's a difference between we need to talk and do you have space? We need to talk is going to create a whole lot more stuff. I don't know if anyone else has that trigger, but that's totally one of my triggers. Do you have space? Because I can hold this. I want to connect with you. And it just takes a lot more time for me to share my intimate, vulnerable feelings. So I don't want to show up in a place where you're going to shut it off, or I can't hold your vulnerable feelings. So it takes a level of self-awareness and self-understanding, but also the awareness of your partners, your subtle partners' movements and needs as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I wanted to dive in and get Scott's a little bit about what people are going to get from the course. And I want to tell people, when you think about the course, if you're here and you want to invite your partner to come to the course, I'm going to tell you what not to do and what to do. What not to do is, Trish, the way you communicate really sucks. It creates this real difference in us. And if you come to this course, they're going to fix you. And then you're going to communicate better and I'm going to love you more. See, I did a little over the top.
Me? All I heard, all of that was, you think I'm a shit communicator and you don't love me.
So maybe I'll ask Scott and Trish, how do you actually engage? If this is something you want and you want your partner to come with you, how do you engage them? So let's first figure out what it is. So Scott, tell us a little bit more, or Trish, what are some of the key components that they're going to get? I can't hear you. You're muted.
We're talking about the Relationship Essentials course,
yes,
which is starting in early January. So it's still a little ways off. You got time to prepare, learn a little bit more about it. And this is, to be honest, my signature course. I've taught it 7 times now. And, it evolves and adapts, but it's just like the title says, it's the essentials for having healthy relationships. And it's not just for couples. It's good for singles. It's good for anybody who wants to have good relationships. It's not just about romantic relationships. It's about the foundational tools for good relationship. And a perfect example is at the core of it is self-love. And one of the reasons why Trish is a wonderful teaching partner for me is she is the goddess of self-love. She has the self-love show every Thursday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. She and her partner Dawn are teaching self-love. And so really learning to love ourselves is so foundational to any of our relationships. Otherwise, if we don't really love ourselves, we're either looking for someone to love us, right? So there's like this gaping hole that we're trying to fill, and nobody can. Nobody can fill that hole forever. Maybe temporarily it might seem that way, but no. Also, if we don't really love ourselves, we can't receive healthy love because we don't think we're worthy of it. So the key to building healthier relationships is building a healthier relationship to yourself. So that's a big part of the Relationship Essentials course. Celebrating the ways that we do love ourselves and respect ourselves, and looking at, okay, what are the stories that we run that diminish our self-esteem and our self-worth? So there's that element to it. There's the element of communication skills, some of which we've talked about today, how to really listen, how to really express, how to slow down, how to manage difficult situations. And there's a lot of emotional intelligence skill building, learning how to manage our emotions. For men, it's often allowing ourselves to acknowledge uncomfortable emotions. Uncomfortable emotions are okay, they're part of life. They're not bad, they're not negative, but they are uncomfortable. How to work with it, right? So, and again, the course is fun. I want to make it really clear, this is fun. We have really cool people. We have several love coaches like Trish, and some of our other love coaches, Timothy, Heidi, Jessica, are all going to be in the course teaching it with me. And then we go out into breakout groups, we go into pods. It's a lot of fun. We make it a fun experience, learning these amazing tools. And by the way, a lot of the people who take the course have taken it 1, 2, even 3 times before, because it's so much fun. It's very enjoyable. We build community, and they want to keep practicing. It's like going to the gym. You don't just go to the gym and take the class once. You keep practicing. So a lot of people in the class have taken it before and are coming back to just keep building those skills, building those ways of communicating, listening, connecting, honoring self. So that's what I'd have to say. And Trish is taking the course. Anything you want to add, Trish, that I missed? Or
No, you didn't miss anything. I just want to jump on that and expand some more, is that you really start to learn how to communicate better and to really manage conflict, but also really start to define and understand what you need. And again, there's a lot of self-love, but a lot of self-awareness, even more than this idea of self-love, that it's the foundation of how you connect with other people. So if I'm running on insecurities, like I'm just asking people to show up in this way that they might not be able to. So it's really starting to define what you actually have to offer, but also what you really need. And that right there gives you the opportunity to be empathetic and listen for what other people need. So by learning how to really learn the skills for yourself, you learn how to relate with other people, right? There's just like so much that you get to learn about how to be empathetic with yourself in the past. You get to build community. You get to practice in a safe container. And that's, I think, a really important piece too. You get a really safe container in which to practice these things when you have triggers that come up. That you get, there's a whole Love Coach Academy group with like thousands of people in it, right? That I know that if I show up on Wednesday night, that I'm going to, at the empathy practice group, that I'm going to be able to practice empathy, but also give and receive it. And it's just an amazing community and an amazing class to really give you self-awareness and better relationship skills. It's stunning.
thank you. I want to acknowledge that some of the people that have taken the class are in our Zoom room right now. So if Krishna or Paul, if you want to offer any thoughts about how the course has served you, pop it in the chat box and we'll bring you on and you can, oh, Krishna said happy to. So I'm gonna bring on, this is one of my dear friends. This is Krishna. We met professionally. He came to a Tantra festival that I was teaching at in Byron Bay, Australia. And we met, and he then took my course. He took both Relationship Essentials and then Relationship Mastery. And I've done some coaching with Krishna. And welcome, Krishna.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Trish. Thank you, Paul. So, Scott, you and I first met, it's approaching 6 years ago now.
Wow.
And during that time, I've done your Relationship Mastery program several times. I've done your Relationship Essential course several times. And beyond that, Scott and I have had a coaching relationship. And it's actually our third year. We're coming to the end of our third year together where we've been doing weekly sessions. And, you know, Scott, your analogy of different ways of going to the gym. Yeah, I can have a personal trainer. I can do it on my own. Yeah, I like having a trainer. I also like doing courses and programs. But I guess the biggest distinctions for me was I've learned a new way of relating through these programs. And I knew I had a certain life blueprint, and it taught me how to show up in a certain way. I'm a doctor's son. I learned how to be smart. I went to an elite boys' school. I learned how to be smart there too. And then I went and studied law, and I learned how to be right. Imagine the kind of relationships I've had.
Right.
Oh,
We can all laugh about it now.
well,
So
Krishna,
when someone says, Krishna, how many times have you done relationship mastery? I'm like, well, now you know why.
yeah, you bring up a beautiful point, because we talk about, and Scott talks about, I talk about, we communicate from our head, our heart, or our hurt. And
Yeah.
and like our head and our hurt are set up to destroy relationships, and it's learning how to go from your head to your heart. And you were perfect. I love your example. I'll turn it back over to you, Krishna, if there's anything.
Oh, thank you. And so not only have I learned how to communicate differently, I've learned how to show up differently to relationships. You know what? Here's a novel approach. What if I showed up already full? I don't need someone to unload on and tell them about my day. I have Scott for that. Or whatever my self-care program is. But my partner is not my self-care person. So I'm learning new ways of relating. And here's a novel one. I've also worked on enough wounds through this program that I'm no longer attracting my wound mate again and again and again.
So, Krishna, can I ask a question? If people are on this call and they're going, well, what if my partner won't go with me? Would you tell them to go by themselves or to wait?
Oh, tough call. Do they want to change their life, or do they want to change their relationship? Now, sometimes changing our lives will lead to changing our relationship. Sometimes our partner will come on that journey with us. Sometimes they won't. And whatever they choose, it's okay. But for me, I want to change my life. And I'm someone who's into constant and never-ending improvement. If every year I can improve my life by 1% or 2%, then you know what, over 5 or 10 or 20 years, it actually changes. So I would say do it anyway. And it will change your relationship, and it will change your life.
I actually wanted to say something about that. It's not about getting your person to show up with you, but sharing for the reasons why you want to do it for you. So you can never be like, oh, hey, Krishna, I want you to do it because you need to get better. It's about, I'm going to do this program because I'm really invested in communicating better, in communicating in more clear, compassionate, loving ways for me and for you. Like, I want connection. And so I'm going to take this course. Do you want to take it with me? So coming from a heart-centered approach rather than you're bad and wrong, which is probably going to change your life and your relationship.
Absolutely. Now, Trisha, you're spot on there. And there are ways of communicating with our partner that they might want to do it with us. But I think Paul asked the question, what's my advice if my partner doesn't want to do it? Do I do it on my own? And will it result in a better relationship? Will it result in a better me showing up to that relationship and less conflict in the relationship? Absolutely. Will it show up in a better relationship? Oh gosh, I've learned you can't change the other person. Their triggers are still going to be their triggers. Their communication is still going to be their communication. But am I happier in the relationship? Am I communicating better in the relationship? Do we have less upsets? Absolutely. So the answer is hell yes. Do it on your own.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Krishna, for coming on. I know we've just gone over the hour mark, and we're going to sort of a little bit over, but I want to let people know how they can move forward. And look, there's a number of ways you might know. You may want to work with Trish and Paul on their singles program. You may want to get coaching from Paul. You might want to get coaching from Trish. Honestly, I'm not currently providing coaching. My cup is full. But if you're interested in the Relationship Essentials course, then I would love to talk to you. So here's what you do. I'm going to do a little screen share. What we want you to do is go to our website, which is lovecoachacademy.com. That's us, lovecoachacademy.com. And you'll notice that when you go to the website right away, this little quiz, which Paul put together, thank you, Paul, comes up and just asks a few questions. So we know, okay, who are you? Are you single? Are you in a relationship? Let's say you press single, then what's your situation? Not dating, non-monogamous, dating. You know, you answer that. I'm dating. Okay. Then how long since your last term? Basically, we ask about 10 questions that helps us to know who you are, where you're at, and which of us can support you. And then you get, by taking that quiz, which takes about 2 minutes, you get a free 15-minute discovery session with one of us. Not sure if that includes Krishna or not. We haven't asked Krishna if he's willing to provide discovery sessions, but if you really like him, he is recently single and he's an amazing guy. So, you know, if you want to get a discovery session with Krishna, you can ask for it and I'll pass it on to him. But if you are looking, you know, like if you're in a relationship and is struggling, Paul's a good person to work with. If you're single and wanting to really get your single act together, work with Trish or join the course that Paul and Trish are doing. And if you're really wanting to change your whole relationship reality, let's do a 15-minute discovery session. I'll tell you more about Relationship Essentials. It's by invitation only. And that's where we want you to go. lovecoachacademy.com. Fill out the quiz and join us.
Yeah.
So I'm going to wrap it up with this kind of, you know, and I'll hand it back to Scott if there's any last things. But if you want a remarkable relationship, you need remarkable relationship skills. Like if you want to be a great baseball player or piano player, you go to the skills and you get the skills. And there's a huge difference between people who want to and people who want to want to.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
People who want to be in shape, they're at the gym, they're working out, they're doing stuff. People who want a great relationship, they're getting the skills, they're getting coaching. It's an active thing. So like if I'm not taking a course, well, if I'm not teaching one, I'm taking one, I'm learning. And so it's like, it's a constant showing up. So do you want to have a great relationship, or do you want to sit on the couch and want to have a great relationship and hope someday the tooth fairy will come to you? So this is a chance to really immerse yourself in something amazing with people that can give you the distinctions that are going to be hard to find by yourself. One of my mentors, Tony Robbins, said, turn decades into days. So rather than spend decades trying to figure this out and travel around the globe, come to the people that have spent most of Scott's adult life has been learning and teaching these tools, and come and be with the masters and give yourself the support. And it's not about, is the course worth it? Are you worth it? Am I worth having the love and support and the tools to create the kind of relationship I want? You know, and that's why Trish is so amazing at it, because this is a woman that knows about how to self-worth and how to help other people find that in themselves. So there's magic that happens here. Say that?
You know how you find stuff like that is that you either have like really shit relationships for a long time, and then you have really like you struggle with your worth and your self-love. You develop these skills. Like I didn't just like wake up when I was 6 and be like, oh my God, I want to do a self-love show. I built those skills. I built the skills for empathy. I took Scott's class. I'm going to take it again.
And listen, even though I'm leading classes, I'm still developing skills. And one is light touch. Trish and I, and sometimes Paul, once or twice a day, we get together with a number of other people and we practice light touch. Yes. Light touch is kind of a beautiful way of combining awakening of the senses with prayer, affirmations for ourselves, for each other, and for our world. And so we gather together every morning and every evening, and it's a practice. So we all have these different practices. We've got the empathy practice group, which Krishna comes to almost every Wednesday night. Krishna's at, the empathy practice group. I'm going to add him to the spotlight here. And Paul, Paul teaches on Thursday nights and Sunday afternoons, his how to have great relationship stuff. So there's a lot of ways that we're learning, we're growing together, inviting all of you. Check out Love Coach Academy, fill out the survey, learn what we offer and how we can best support you. Because life is relationship. If you want to change the world, change your relationships. So, Paul, thank you for all your support and your great questions. Krishna, I love you. Thank you for coming on and sharing a little bit of your experience. Trish, thank you for being my teaching partner. Oh, one last thing. Speaking of Trish and teaching partner, we do have a few spots left. A week from tomorrow, Saturday, December 12th, we are teaching this course. We taught it before and people loved it and they said, you got to do it again. So we are merging without toxic enmeshment, how to maintain your center while rising in love, not falling in love, but rising in love. Just started to say something.
Oh, I was just yesing all over. Yes.
So join us. It's going to be a week from Saturday, December 12th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's a powerful course, absolutely changing. Look, it feels great to merge, but it feels really funky when we get attached or anxious or go into all those patterns. We're going to show you how to recognize the patterns and to break them. So join us on December 12th. It's going to be powerful. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching, especially those of you watching the video replay. Thank you for those of you who were in our Zoom room. Waterfall, Kate, Jeff, Jay, Grace, Paul, and all the others. God's blessings. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.